On an ordinary night in Moscow, over 850 people gathered at the Dubrovka Theater to enjoy a popular musical, but this night would be anything but ordinary. An armed group of Chechen militants stormed the theater, taking the audience and performers hostage. Their demand? The immediate withdrawal of Russian troops from Chechnya. Under the threat of violence and surrounded by explosives, hundreds of hostages were held for 3 tense days. As negotiations faltered, the world watched and the stakes grew higher with every passing hour. Facing mounting pressure, on October 26th, the Russian government authorized a controversial rescue mission. Special forces released a potent gas into the theater, aiming to incapacitate the militants. But what followed would turn the crisis into one of Russia's darkest and most debated tragedies. The operation ended the siege, but at a devastating cost. Hostages lost their lives. Join as we delve into the events that unfolded over those 3 days, exploring the roots of the crisis, the controversial tactics used, and the lasting impact on Russia and the world. The Moscow theater hostage crisis occurred in October of 2002, when Chechen separatists seized the crowded theater in Moscow, taking approximately 850 people hostage. This tragic event, which ultimately resulted in the demise of over 130 people, revealed the depth of the Russian-Chechen conflict and sparked worldwide attention due to the controversial rescue operation carried out by the Russian Special Forces. The crisis, which spanned several tense days, highlighted the complex political struggles between Russia and Chechnya, as well as the ethical dilemmas and tactical challenges inherent in counter-terrorism operations. The Chechen conflict, rooted in Russia's turbulent relationship with the region, was marked by attempts from Chechnya to gain independence from Russia after the Soviet Union's collapse. The First Chechen War in the mid-1990s led to significant devastation, though it briefly ended in a tenuous peace. However, after renewed violence erupted in 1999, Russian forces re-entered Chechnya in an attempt to reassert control, leading to a second brutal war. Amidst these escalating conflicts, Chechen militants seeking to pressure Russia to withdraw its troops began staging attacks on Russian soil, with the Moscow theater hostage crisis being one of the most high-profile and deadly. On October 23, 2002, around 40 armed Chechen militants, including women fitted with explosive vests, stormed the theater during the performance of the popular musical Nordost. Led by militant commander Masvar Baryev, they demanded an immediate Russian withdrawal from Chechnya. Baryev and his group made their intentions clear. They are prepared to end hostages and blow up the theater if their demands were not met. They issued warnings to the Russian government, while the hostages were separated, with many forced to sit quietly as they watched the events unfold. Conditions inside the theater grew increasingly dire. Hostages were denied adequate food and water, and the threat of violence hung over them constantly. The militants, many of whom were women, often referred to as Black Widows due to their association with family members lost in the conflict, placed explosives throughout the theater, making any potential rescue operation perilous. Russian officials, including then-President Vladimir Putin, faced mounting pressure to resolve the crisis swiftly. Initial negotiations with the militants were inconclusive, and as hours turned to days, the threat to hostages' lives grew. After 3 days of stalled negotiations, Russian special forces decided on an unconventional and highly controversial tactic. And on October 26, they pumped an unknown chemical gas into the theater to incapacitate the militants before storming the building. The gas, later speculated to contain a fentanyl-based derivative, rendered both hostages and militants unconscious. Special forces entered and quickly neutralized the incapacitated militants, securing the building and evacuating the hostages. However, the lack of preparation and medical support from the side effects of the gas led to tragic consequences. over 120 hostages died from gas exposure, with many unable to receive timely medical attention due to confusion and delays in the rescue effort. Although the operation ended the siege, the high casualty rate among hostages sparked outrage and criticism, both within Russia and internationally. The Moscow Theater hostage crisis left a profound mark on Russian society and international views on counter-terrorism tactics. The Russian government faced backlash for its handling of the crisis, particularly its use of the gas that was toxic to the hostages as well as the militants. Critics argue that the government failed to ensure proper medical preparedness, contributing to the high number of fatalities. Additionally, the Russian government's secrecy regarding the gas composition hindered medical professionals' ability to treat those affected, raising questions about transparency and accountability. Human rights organizations condemned the operation, claiming that the Russian response prioritized tactical success over hostages' safety. However, Russian officials defended the operation, stating that using gas was the only viable option to prevent the militants from detonating explosives and causing larger catastrophe. This stark divide in perception underscored the ethical complexities of handling terrorist incidents with hostages in close quarters. The Dubrovka Theater siege had lasting repercussions on Russian policies and public sentiment. Domestically, the crisis led to a hardening of Russian counter-terrorism laws, granting security agencies greater powers and increasing surveillance on suspected extremists. The incident also intensified Russian hostility towards Chechen separatists, fueling the portrayal of Chechen militants as terrorist threats to the Russian state. Internationally, the event drew attention to the difficult choices involved in counter-terrorism, especially when rescuing hostages under immediate threat. The Moscow Theater hostage crisis stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of terrorism and counter-terrorism alike. For Russia, the crisis reinforced a zero-tolerance policy towards Chechen insurgency, leading to further security crackdowns in the years that followed. For the survivors and families of those lost, it left lasting trauma and a complex legacy that underscores the tragic intersections of political conflict and human vulnerability. Ultimately, the crisis demonstrated the limits of forceful intervention in hostage situations, shaping discourse on counterterrorism and setting a sobering precedent for how much situations might be handled in the future. So if you made it to the end, thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe out there.